Today, we're diving into a story where ancient myth, modern medicine, and one of our absolute deepest fears all crash into each other. But first, I want you to imagine something. Really think about this. You can hear everything. Your mind is sharp, totally aware. But you can't move, you can't speak, you can't even open your eyes. What if your own body became your prison? Now, that isn't just some hypothetical horror story. It might actually be the key to solving one of the most fascinating medical mysteries in all of history, the very, very strange death of Alexander the Great. So, let's set the scene. The year is 323 BC. Alexander the Great, after conquering a huge chunk of the known world, gets sick in Babylon and is declared dead. A legend story is over. Or so it seemed, because this is where things get really weird. For 6 entire days after they said he was dead, his body showed absolutely no signs of decay. Now, in the sweltering heat of ancient Mesopotamia, that was completely unheard of. It wasn't natural. To them, it had to be a miracle. You have to put yourself in their shoes. For the people back then, there was really only one possible explanation. This wasn't natural. It had to be supernatural. This perfect preservation was the ultimate proof of what a lot of people already believed. Alexander wasn't just a king. He was a god. It's a great story, right? The kind of thing myths are made of. But what if the truth isn't divine at all? What if the real explanation is found in a medical textbook, not a sacred one? And what if that explanation is way, way more horrifying than any myth? Yeah, modern science has a very different theory, one that completely reframes this ancient miracle into a terrifying medical condition. The term is pseudo-thanatos. It's Greek for, you guessed it, false death. And it's exactly what it sounds like. A state where your body's vital signs, your heartbeat, your breathing, drop so incredibly low that they're just impossible to detect with the tools they had back then. You look dead, but you're not. You're very much alive. So this new theory suggests that Alexander wasn't a god preserving his own body. No, he was a living man trapped by some kind of progressive neurological disorder who was mistakenly declared dead days before he actually died. And this is where the story shifts from a historical puzzle to pure nightmare fuel. Let's break down exactly what was probably happening to him. They call it the living embalming trap. First, a total paralysis starts to set in, usually moving from the limbs inward. Then the body's metabolism slows right down to a crawl. The pulse gets faint, breathing becomes shallow, almost imperceptible. And then, the final, most terrifying step. The mind is still there, fully conscious. A prisoner watching its own body get prepared for a funeral. Just try to wrap your head around that horror. He could probably hear his generals arguing over who would get his empire. He could feel people touching his body, preparing it for burial. But he couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't give any sign at all that he was still there. He was, in effect, being embalmed alive. Now, this potential fate, it wasn't unique to Alexander. In fact, his story taps into one of our oldest and most primal fears as human beings. See, for most of human history, figuring out if someone was actually dead was more of an art than a science. The line between a deep coma, a state like Alexander's, and, actual death was dangerously, terrifyingly thin. I mean, just look at the difference. Back in antiquity, what were their best tools? A feather or a mirror to check for breath, pinching someone to see if they'd react? It was crude, and it left so much room for catastrophic mistakes. Now compare that to today, where an EEG sees brain activity and an ECG can pick up the faintest heartbeat. Alexander's doctors just didn't have the technology to see what was really going on. And all this uncertainty led to this whole culture of fear. Taphophobia, that's the clinical name for the fear of being buried alive. It was a huge deal. It led to some pretty grim but creative inventions, like safety coffins that had bells and breathing tubes, just in case, and waiting mortuaries, where they'd literally watch bodies for days to see if they'd wake up. So this deep-seated historical terror, it eventually pushed science to find a better way. And it's what brought us to our modern understanding of that final definitive moment. And here's the good news in all of this. Because of the incredible progress in medical science, the kind of mistake that likely happened to Alexander is almost impossible today. We've managed to draw a much clearer line, and we back it up with technology that can see what the naked eye just can't. But Alexander's story is still a really chilling lesson, isn't it? It's a powerful reminder that we can only know what our tools allow us to see. And if the greatest minds of their time could mistake a living king for a dead god, it leaves us with this one big lingering question: what are the limits of our understanding today? What crucial signs of life or consciousness might we be missing right now?